Okay, before we start this one, I just want to make sure we all understand one fundamental thing. The key is to start with a good shot and make it great. Not much can be done for a bad shot, so never even get into that. The other important part for wildlife is to try and get the subject in the clear. As long as there are no distractions going over and around the subject, it will be a lot simpler to clean up and make it look a lot better in post. If you're taking a fair amount of time trying to improve the image you're working on, then you probably picked the wrong image. And that's the basic benchmark I also use personally. I just pick up another image and then try. In general, for wildlife, just take the time out, maybe 5 minutes, 10 minutes, and the image can actually improve drastically. It doesn't generally require more than 5 to 10 minutes on a good image. So that should never be an issue. Even with this image, I decided to use it for this video only after I had processed it because it works. And this is an image from today from my rooftop session. I was already planning to get something similar like this with the rock pigeons, which are around in plenty of numbers. To my surprise, I found this collared dove drop in and got this as well. So that was a nice surprise, and that's what we will use for this demonstration. So this is the original frame that I got. It's not a bad shot by any standards, but it can be made a lot better, and that's what happens in this one. This is the final image which I have already shared, and now we'll try and make this image look like the final. Okay, so we are already in the develop module, and instead of trying to reprocess this, I will simply go back to the final image, come back to this, click on previous to make a copy of all the settings. As you can see, Lightroom does take time. And then we'll just delete the adjustment brush and start from there. Now, this is already processed. The background is not bad, but it would probably look better if it was more consistent, in this case black. So for that, we use the adjustment brush, the shortcut being K, and click on this or press K. We also have a show selected mask overlay. The shortcut is O. We'll turn this on. Double click on effect to set all of these to the defaults of zeros. We'll pull the exposure down, the contrast up, highlights down, shadows down, whites down, and the blacks down. Now increase the size of the brush. You can reduce the feather to around 20. And for the first part, we'll just make broad brushes around and leave the edges for later. We just drag this around, make sure the overlay shows you where you're painting. So this is generally where you don't really need to bother much, and we simply paint it over. Okay, now that we are done with this, we have a small option checkbox here of auto mask. The shortcut is A. You can either enable this or press the command key while dragging to enable this. For now we will keep it pressed. So what auto mask will do is to try and determine the color difference, pick out the edges, and not select anything that is not on the plus sign. So now that auto mask is on, we will just drag along the edges For wildlife it will never be perfect because there will be details that are blurred into the background. There's never a sharp edge all across, so it will never be perfect and you will need to work with it. So once we are done with this part with the auto mask on, so you can see there is some spillover onto the subject as well. Wherever you have the red, that means it's spilled into the subject. Now to reverse this action of selection, if you want to deselect, press Alt and this changes to a minus. So we don't want the reds here, we don't want this area selected, nor this, nor this. These seem to be okay. You don't want the reds here. Okay, we'll let go the Alt, reduce the size. Since the auto mask is on, we'll still do the edges a wee bit. Okay, so that's the basic level of selection, and just try and improve on that. So we turned on this mask overlay. We'll just switch it off to see the effect. Now you can see this has not been selected, so we'll just remove this. There's a slight patch here, right, and here, and then we press the space bar and click on the part we want to zoom into, or you can also use the navigator for the same. For example, if we go here, and then of course we can make the brush smaller. Since auto mask is on, it will generally not select much. So you can increase the feather when we are working with the edges, let's say around 45, make this slightly larger, right? So let's say here we press the space bar, pan this up, reduce the size, mark this out. We have some here, and press the space, pan again, press the space, and let's get into this part, pan here. So I guess you get the idea here. Let's try this part in a different fashion. So what we'll do here is we have a density slider and a flow. Currently I've been working with a flow of 45. Generally it would be set to 100. What I'll do is I'll set it to 10 and the density to around let's say 50%. So this is not going to go beyond the 50% no matter how many times we paint over. The flow is essentially the number of times you would have to paint over this area or any such area before you reach a density, rather opacity of 50%. So if you just start painting here, you'll see the color is disappearing very slowly. This is another way to gradually merge the edges into the background. You'll have to experiment with your density and flow as to what works best in a particular image. In fact, I'll switch the auto mask off and just work this. So you see we cannot go beyond the 50% easily. So you just keep massaging this, and finally it's a reasonable image. We zoom back out, you can press on done. There are of course some similar edges here which we would have to do the same way, and that's it. There you have it, a black background, a consistent looking image. The same can be done even if it's something like this. Now this is an image I got at the Corbett National Park earlier this month. Using the same technique, this is the final image that I shared. Yes, I left the branch and a bit of green just to add some color to it, but this shows you what can be done using these techniques.